Well, we go through the Sunday papers for you. This morning I'm joined by political correspondent at The Sun, Martina Bett, and the broadcaster, Gemma Forte. So lovely to see you both. Very good morning to you. We're kicking off, Martina, with the front of the Sunday Times. And there's been a lot of speculation over whether or not Labour would lift the two-child benefit cap. This article suggesting that that's not going to happen, and that's partly because of the retreat they had to make this week on welfare reforms. Explain it to us.
Yeah, it's all down to the retreat that they did last week, actually, because until a few weeks ago, Number 10 with us was quite clear that after this strategy, child poverty strategy, that they were going to announce that they were going to lift the two-child benefit cap that we know is dear to lots of Labour MPs. It was actually the first sort of rebellion that Keir Starmer suffered at the beginning of his premiership. He took the whip away from those 7 Labour MPs, showed them like strength, and then last week, of course, he backed down on these 5 billion benefit cuts. And the Treasury is now saying, actually, you know what, we don't have money for another thing that we're going to have to pay on welfare, these £3 billion on top of the 5 billion that we're going to have to spend on benefits, because actually what we saw last week, so this bill, the disability and benefits bill, was going to cut 5 billion from this like really big spiralling welfare bill, but now it's going to cost money, actually, because there's nothing in there that is going to, save any money, save any cash. So now we're going to have to see what happens, because actually lots of Labour MPs are going to say, if you've U-turned on that, well, maybe you'll U-turn on this as well.
Yeah, it might have given them more power, or a feeling of more power. Yeah. They can push through more of what they want. And if they don't lift the two-child benefit cap, there are going to be plenty of, some of them the same people, but there'll be plenty of people within the party that'll be disappointed.
Absolutely. And you can sort of see that they're quite hamstrung. I think it's their own fault, because I think that Labour, most people assume they are the party of sort of looking after the working class, basically, or people who are more deprived financially and have more difficult sort of socio-economic status. And it all seems to be targeting the most vulnerable in society and the poorest. And then with papers to back up the fact that it doesn't really save anything. It's like a false economy. And it's like, if you want to lift children out of poverty, that would instantly lift 250,000 children out of poverty. However, where I feel sorry for them is they're tinkering around the edges of everything. Essentially, if we rejoined the single market, you could just find 40 billion. I mean, maybe do that. That was a great idea, wasn't it? As it is, we're stuck with this sort of terrible economic, gloomy outlook, massively in part because of Brexit. But when they even looked at this welfare bill, 55% of our welfare bill goes towards pensioners. Quite obviously, you're not going to fiddle with the state pension. You absolutely wouldn't do that. They did try on the winter fuel payment. Again, that wasn't allowed, when arguably... I know it's only anecdotal, but a friend of mine was saying he took his mum on a cruise and they were all sort of eating their buffet, really moaning about having that taken away. And perhaps that should have been means tested, because, of course, you don't want to put really poverty-stricken pensioners into sort of worse decline. But there were millionaires getting that. They're not doing that. So they need to find a cohesive strategy and listen to their backbenchers more as well. I know there's been a lot of distraction with foreign policy, but they're just not together.
Do you think communication is an issue? I mean, now Rachel Reeves is saying that she's not ruling out tax rises. There seems to be a bit of a change of tone, because the money has to be found from somewhere. Has there got to be more communication about the trade-offs that might be required with some policies? If you're going to have this policy, it's going to cost you this much. We need to raise the money elsewhere.
Absolutely, and I think that's what the problem with these benefits cuts was, really, because it wasn't trailed. It was actually meant to be announced in the spending review that Rachel Reeves did earlier this year, and then they panicked because there were some leaks about these benefit cuts and decided to announce it a few weeks before. But people in government were really clear that actually these 5 billion were not going to scrap the surface of what was needed to do. And in terms of the backbenchers, yes, of course, we've seen it last week that there's lots of people that were very unhappy about the way that the government went about this. But actually, there's lots of Labour MPs that I'm speaking to. They're actually saying, we've got to get real about reforming the state. We've got an old population, flatlining productivity. We've got very few babies. So, we need to change expectations about what the government can do as a state and what we can afford. Actually, we're seeing that we can't afford very much.
Yeah, and still this question and headache for Rachel Reeves come the budget about where she's going to find the money.
Yeah. I don't envy her.
No. Let's move on to the Sunday Telegraph's front page next. They are saying, the Tories are saying, axe sickness benefits for foreigners. They're saying that's one way that you could get the benefit bill down.
That's right, and I think it's very interesting because but Kemi Badenoch is being quite clever here in the way that she's going to put welfare reform at the heart of her agenda. This is one of the first policies that she's announcing, and the reason for that is because Keir Starmer, we've got this bill, we've just spoken about it. We're expected to spend 100 billion by 2030 on disability and sickness benefits. That's almost the entire output of the economy of Slovakia. That's more than the output of the City of London. That's a lot of money. And in terms of PIP, there's 1,000 people a day signing on PIP, and Keir Starmer's government can't touch it again because of what happened last week. What we've seen is going to be very difficult for him to do anything about that bill in the next 4 years.
And the Tories keen to sort of press that bruise that has been caused by this week.
Yeah, and you can understand that. And I think one thing that the Labour Party sort of need to start thinking about is do they want to come up with their own policies and stick with them? Or are they just very worried about what the press are going to say? And it seems to me they're being quite dictated by that and sort of pandering more to sort of Nigel Farage and the Daily Mail rather than perhaps what they could be looking at. Because, the discrepancy in wealth, the absolute inequality that is just widening and widening and widening as well. And there just never seems to be much looking above. It seems to be punching down a lot. And I think perhaps people that voted for Labour weren't expecting that.
Do you think that's right, Martina? I mean, and also there are some calls for saying, well, if you do need to raise money, make it wealth taxes, and yet there are others who say that doesn't actually bring in very much money. So
that's right, and we know that Rachel Reeves and the Treasury are actually looking at scrapping the non-dom policy they introduced at the budget, because they saw that there's lots of people that are very able to finding very good tax advice that can just move around and move their wealth, and that's what we're seeing. We're seeing lots of people, lots of wealthy people from the UK moving to countries like Italy and Portugal because they've got very good gold visas.
And they're in the single market.
I feel a theme here this morning, Gemma.
and I know that some will leave, and I think that income obviously has to be protected, no matter what level you're at. I don't think people can pay plenty of loopholes that people can take advantage of. And where do we end this? Do we keep saying save the millionaires, save the billionaires, but let's go here, when people cannot afford to give any more money away?
I just think it's not a one,
it's not as simple as that. Maybe we can revisit this in the next hour. We're out of time now, then. Thank you.
I'm Stephen Murphy, and I'm Sky's Ireland correspondent based here in Dublin.
The water